my name is Jessica Pingwild, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Alright y'all, my serious voice is coming out because today's story time is a lot different from any other story I've yet told here on my channel. Today's story is my diagnosis story. About a year ago, almost to the day, my life totally changed. What I originally thought was food poisoning actually turned into a long-term chronic illness that I may or may not have had for years. Thanks to COVID-19, this year has already been an incredibly hectic and chaotic one, but adding on this diagnosis just really took the cake, honestly. So for today's story, I'm actually not going to get into a bunch of the nitty-gritty details because I've actually already done that over on my blog. In May or June, I can't remember which, of 2020, I wrote a blog post called Seeking a Diagnosis During a Pandemic. And in that blog post, I go through all of the details of all of my tests, what my doctors thought was wrong, and I do it all through the lens of somebody experiencing this during a global pandemic and what that did for the delay of appointments and tests and my anxiety and all of those things. So if you're at all curious as to what that whole detailed experience looked like, be sure to go check it out on my blog. I've linked it down below in the description for ease of access, but if you would like to just go to your browser and type in my website, therollingexplorer.com, and search Seeking a Diagnosis, you should find it very, very easily. So if I'm not going to talk about the details, you're probably wondering what this video is going to be. So I'm going to talk about the origin of my symptoms because they came on very, very fast and it was very, very scary, and I want to give you some insight into the reality of how quickly disability and chronic illness can alter your life. I'm also going to talk about patient advocacy and how the medical field doesn't always believe patients, especially women, so I'm going to talk about that. And then finally, I'm going to talk about what it's like to get a new diagnosis, especially as somebody who's already disabled, who already has a physical impairment and has all of these daily challenges anyway, and what it's like to now have this diagnosis, how I've handled it, and what's kind of been going on in my mind, and more specifically, why I haven't talked about it until now. So be sure to stick it out to the end, folks, because I am going to give you all of that information here in today's video. So it all started on a Monday afternoon, and I know that seems very specific, but it matters to the timeline. It was a Monday afternoon, and up until the point that my symptoms hit, I was fine. I'd eaten normally all day. I'd had breakfast, I'd had lunch, and both of them were quite large meals and probably filled with things that, upon retrospect, weren't very good for me. But either way, I consumed them and I was fine. I was in a good mood. I'd been pretty productive that day, and it wasn't until I was on my way home from the gym, which from my hometown is about 3 towns over, so it was kind of a drive. It wasn't until I was in the car that I started to realize that, oh, I'm not feeling well, at all. And when I tell you that my symptoms hit me like a truck, I mean that. Actually, it was scary how quickly I went from being laughing with my dad in the car and just having a really good time to, oh my God, I'm gonna hurl, right now. And I have had stomach issues kind of my whole life, and I've felt nauseous a lot throughout my life, but never this quickly, and for the most part, I'd never really gotten motion sick before. I used to ride roller coasters all the freaking time growing up, and we used to take car trips that were 13 hours long, and I'd be fine. But I will say, as quickly as the intense symptoms showed up, leading up to this day, there had been increased motion sickness, there had been increased nausea and acid reflux and all of these really negative symptoms that soon took over my life completely. But it wasn't until, like I said, I was in this car that it started and it didn't go away. I didn't eat dinner that night, and I went to bed pretty early from my memory. And I thought I had a fever too. It was a minor fever, I think it was just a 99, but it was still noticeably, I was warm and not well. So I woke up the next day and I still felt really ill. I didn't feel necessarily like I was going to throw up, but I was feeling really crampy. I was feeling really just nauseous and uncomfortable, upset stomach, So I didn't eat again. I just said, I'm not gonna eat lunch, I'm not gonna eat breakfast, I'm just gonna see what I can handle. I think for dinner that night, I ended up eating toast, and that was it. So it was really weird because for me to not eat food, that's how you know I'm sick. Because if I'm not eating, or at least before all this happened, if I wasn't eating, that meant something was actually wrong with me because I love food. I usually turn to food out of stress. So it's not like I would stop eating just because I was anxious or something like that. If I stopped eating, it meant that something was physically wrong with my body. So as the days go on throughout the week, my stomach pains don't really go away. I've hardly eaten anything all week. I think I probably branched out a little bit and had a baked potato or some rice or things like that. But for the most part, I was sticking to a pretty basic and bland diet, and I definitely wasn't eating meals. I was eating pieces of food that I chose to eat at given times because my mom's like, you have to consume something to see if it's going to stay down. But either way, because my symptoms had lasted longer than 3 days, I was starting to get concerned. Originally, I just thought it was something that I ate. It was probably food poisoning or the fact that I ate a lot of really indulgent foods and those could easily cause stomach issues, or it could have been a stomach bug for all I knew. So it could have been anything, really. But in no way was I thinking it was anything super serious. But by the time the 4th day rolled around and I was still feeling like crap, I was like, maybe I should call the doctor. And I was also getting concerned because on Friday night, I was actually scheduled to leave town to go to Milwaukee to visit a friend of mine. And I was really concerned because I didn't want to burden her with my nausea, and I was also planning on moving soon, so this was going to be my last time to see her. And so I really wanted to make sure I could go. If I was still feeling as crappy as I was feeling, there was no way I was going to be able to go and have a good time. So I did the thing, I called the doctor, and they were able to get me in pretty much right before I was gonna go on my trip. So at this doctor appointment, they ask me a bunch of questions, they weigh me, they do all of this. I'd actually already lost 3 pounds, and I know that doesn't sound like much, but 3 pounds in a week is pretty substantial. I lost 3 pounds in that first week just by pretty much not eating. And long story short, they told me that I had gastritis, which is essentially just really bad acid reflux. And I was like, okay, cool, how do we fix it? And they said, just take these antacids a couple of times a day until your stomach kind of settles. I think it was a 14-day period. And then come back in 14 days if you're still having really bad symptoms, or if it gets worse, let us know. And I was like, okay, sure, no problem. So I went up to Milwaukee, I popped one of the pills, and for the first day, I actually felt better. I was like, man, this was the issue. I had no idea. I wouldn't think that acid reflux could cause this much cramping, this much pain, but apparently it can. Unfortunately, I wasn't so lucky on that second day in Milwaukee. My symptoms were 10 times worse than they had been the entire week prior. And needless to say, I went back to that doctor on Monday and was like, yo, these pills ain't it. This is not the answer. I do not think gastritis is my only problem here. And basically, me doing that just started an entire train of testing. I had blood tests. I had an ultrasound of my liver. I had an MRI of my liver. I had a colonoscopy, an endoscopy. I had so many things. I met with 2 different doctors. It was a time, y'all. But either way, nothing was really coming up with the answers. There was things that were wrong, and if you're curious about what those are, again, blog post below. But, wrong, but not the cause of my symptoms. So I was finding out new things about my body, which was also stressful, but to learn that they were asymptomatic problems was also confusing and really hard to deal with. And the increased amount of time between tests and doctor's visits was also really stressful. And I'm not really sure if that was due to the pandemic or if it's due to insurance or the fact that doctor's offices are busy. But either way, this time of my life was incredibly I was scared. I was so scared. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Literally, I was up until 5 in the morning, pretty much every night, just in the bathroom or trembling over a garbage can in my room. It was horrendous. I just constantly felt like I was going to be sick. And it was scary because I was like, I don't know if it's actually going to happen. So yeah, not the greatest 4 months of my life, that's for sure. And I was pretty much like bedridden. Like I could go to the couch and I obviously could hop to the bathroom and stuff. But in terms of like staying active like I like to do, in terms of getting work done, working on my blog that I now like completely love doing, none of that was happening. I would watch Netflix for like 12 hours of the day, and then I would try to sleep, be unsuccessful, roll around, hold a garbage can, repeat. That was like my life for 4 months. It was great. But those 4 months culminated in an endoscopy and a colonoscopy duo procedure. And I actually had this scheduled for 3 of those 4 months, so it was something that I knew was coming. But it was still like, when that day finally came, I was really hoping to have answers. And once again, with those tests, they found that something else was wrong that was not the cause of my symptoms, which was just incredible, really. But after I completed those tests, because they didn't find anything substantial, the doctor was just like, yeah, I mean, maybe it's not really that bad. Hopefully the symptoms go away. Why don't we just wait a month? Like, why don't we just postpone any more testing for a month and see how the symptoms progress? One of my biggest critiques of telehealth visits is the fact that you can't look a doctor in the eye and really show them and really tell them and like give them the pain and the emotion that you're feeling to the fullest extent, because I was literally so miserable at this point. And I couldn't believe that this doctor had the audacity to ask me to just live with the symptoms for another month and hope that they went away. Are you kidding me? No, we're taking other tests. We're gonna figure this out because I need answers. I need to start feeling like myself again. I was losing myself. I was losing my personality and my excitement about life. And again, it was COVID time, so it's not like I could do a whole heck of a lot anyway, but like, I at least could enjoy my day. I could do something productive. I could do my blog. I could do literally anything except for sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day. And he just didn't seem to understand that my quality of life was so unbelievably miserable that he was just like, yeah, just wait a month. And I just wasn't having it. I was absolutely livid at this point. He'd also irritated me in other ways, but I digress. Long story short, I went to another doctor. I found a different gastroenterologist, and I was so happy at my decision because not only did I get to go into the office for this person so I could physically, again, have that very personal communication where I show the doctor that I am very upset, I'm very sick, and I'm scared. That's like the big thing, right? Like, I'm scared. Like, you're the doctor. Make me feel at ease. Your job is to make people feel better. And this doctor listened to what I had to say. They took me seriously. They're like, okay, well, it could be this or this. You've not been tested for either of those things yet. Diabetes runs in your family. Why don't we test you for that? See if that could be causing anything as well. So I kid you not, within 2 weeks of having that appointment, I'd had 2 more tests. But the test that revealed my diagnosis, that told me what was wrong, and that ultimately was what I was looking for, because I'd been doing some research, of course, too, during all this time, which, to be fair, wasn't super helping with my anxiety, especially when my doctor started bringing up the potential of cancer and tumors and all of that. I obviously went nuts and started researching everything I could about everything. So not great for my mental health, but in my research and in my discovery of different things that I could be ailed with, gastroparesis came up. And so I knew that the test for that was called a gastric emptying study. And so when this new doctor immediately within that first appointment brought up that that was something that it could be and that she wanted to run that test, I was like, that could be it. That fits. Every single one of my symptoms can be attributed to gastroparesis. Maybe, just maybe, that's what I have. And so I was kind of hopeful, to be quite honest. I obviously don't want gastroparesis at this point. I don't think anybody wants a chronic illness. I just wanted an answer. I just wanted to know that I wasn't making it up, because I do have anxiety, and I do know that there are physical things that can happen to your body due to anxiety. And I was honestly a little concerned that I was doing this to myself. I didn't want to be. I didn't want my doctors to be right and just think that I was off my rocker. I like genuinely was concerned about that, which is ridiculous because I should know my own body well enough. So when I finally had a doctor that was willing to fight with me instead of against me, it gave me so much assurance. It made me feel like I should have been doing this all along. I should have been fighting more for my rights as a patient and for my rights as a human being to get good, solid health care. And because I was so in my head, because I was so worried that I was just being dramatic or I was just being a girl, because of all of those like stereotypes and assumptions and worries that were just plaguing my mind, because of all of that, it took me almost 6 months to get a diagnosis on something that is so freaking simple to get a test for. And long story short, yep, I have gastroparesis. Before I explain more about my diagnosis and how it made me feel and how I've coped with it and how I've had to come to terms with it and actually label myself as somebody with this illness, I do want to just give you the textbook definition of what gastroparesis is. So it literally means paralysis of the stomach. So essentially it affects digestion. Most people are able to fully digest a meal, like a normal sized meal, within 4 hours after consuming it. That's the standard rate. My body takes longer than that. So when they did the gastric emptying study, they fed me eggs and toast. It was great. It was very delicious. And then they stuck me in a machine and they were able to track a little thing that they put in my food throughout that process to see what was going on, how long it was taking to empty. And long story short, I think I was only at 90% emptying at that 4 hour mark, where most people would be completely donesies. Their food would be gone. They wouldn't have to worry anymore. Mine was not fully there yet. So that's where my stomach was. My stomach was just not on the same scale. And so I have gastroparesis. It was really hard for me to label myself as chronically ill and to have this new chronic illness for a lot of reasons. The first one, and probably the biggest one, being I'm already disabled. Do I really need to label myself as sick too? I mean, I'm an amputee. I have a limb difference. I have a very rare condition. I'm already labeled all of those things. Do I really want to add something else on top of it? That's one thing, which is absolutely ridiculous because so many people have so many different disabilities and they don't always work together, and it's okay to say that you have multiple things wrong, and I hate that it took me so long to feel comfortable with it. The second thing is, it's been a really difficult diagnosis for me to wrap my brain around and to really get a grasp of, because I'm really scared of throwing up. Like, genuinely terrified. It is probably my biggest phobia. I'm terrified of spiders and death and drowning and a lot of other things that many people are afraid of, but nothing is to the point of how fearful I am of throwing up. And I wish I was kidding, but like anytime I'm on the brink of vomiting, I have a massive panic attack. That has only exacerbated my symptoms like to the highest degree because whenever I have that intense nausea, I not only obviously feel very physically sick, but I also get mentally ill as well. I start to kind of go into myself and panic and be breathing really heavy and my heart rate increases and I start to sweat and like, it's really bad, guys. And so gastroparesis isn't really the best disease for somebody who is afraid of that, because while I haven't actually thrown up due to it yet, I've been very close. While I haven't yet thrown up, if my symptoms continue and if I continue to have flare-ups, then the chances of me throwing up in the future because of this, and throwing up frequently at that, very possible and very, very likely, which is something that I still haven't gotten over, and it makes me all the more like anxious to talk about it. And then the other thing is, because I haven't thrown up, because I'm able to keep food down, and because my flare up that lasted like the 6 months or whatever, did eventually calm down. I didn't feel like I could fit into the gastroparesis community because I wasn't having as bad of a time as some other people have had with this disease. Some people like truly can't keep anything down. Their digestive system completely shuts down and they need a feeding tube, or they're constantly throwing up, and it like drastically impacts their nutrition and their weight. And yeah, I had a pretty significant weight loss, and yeah, it would hurt my stomach to eat and I'd feel nauseous and I'd almost throw up, but I was not to the point of some other people and how miserable it can get and how they'll have to be hospitalized because they physically are like that ill. And so I was just like, if I'm not experiencing those symptoms, can I really label myself as somebody who has gastroparesis? I've come to terms with the fact that yes, I can, because it impacts my life. It is a part of who I am. It is something I've had to adjust to. And to be quite honest with you, it's completely altered the way that I respond to food, the way that I respond to my body and my weight, and so many different things. My entire perspective on my health has changed. There's so many different things that I have to plan for. It's awful because if you follow me at all, you know I'll be up here in London until like 4, 5, 6 a.m. just like on my phone, not really sure what to do. Like Jack's asleep, I feel sick, I'll either go sit in the bathroom or I'll go sit in our guest bedroom and just be like miserable. I'll drink ginger ale. It's like really disrupting my life. And I actually just had a really big flare up a couple of weeks ago where it lasted for about a week and a half, so like a full 10 days, that I was eating very little, pretty much like toast and butter and bananas, like for a week. And it was awful. I felt so ill. I didn't really sleep a whole lot that week. I couldn't do a lot of work. I was really grateful that I'd worked ahead, I think, in that week, so I didn't have to worry about like creating a bunch of content or writing a whole lot because I just was exhausted. My brain, when I get into that flare-up mode, I just like shut down. My whole body just shuts down. And like that scares me too for the future in terms of once COVID's done, how much is that going to impact my life and my lifestyle? And I like to travel. Is that going to impact that? Is it going to impact my work life? I want to like be a professional. I want to go into an office and have coworkers, and I want to like go hang out with them after work at a pub or whatever. How much of that am I actually going to like get out of life now that I have this and this very debilitating illness that when it strikes hard. And just because I've not been hospitalized due to it, just because I've not dehydrated myself, just because I'm a little bit less bad than some others, doesn't mean that I don't have the disease. It doesn't mean that my body isn't impacted by it. And ultimately, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't talk about it, because now that I've come to terms with it and kind of grown accustomed to the ways that it's going to impact my life, I feel okay disclosing it to you guys. And it's taken a lot of me and a lot of time and a lot of reflection and prayer and a lot of just overall like mental strength to make this video, because to declare this is to, in society's view, declare another weakness, right? And obviously that's internalized ableism. It's ableism just in general, and it's scary to put that label on my back and to be like, not only am I a wheelchair user, not only am I an amputee, I'm also chronically ill. I also have gastroparesis. And yes, it impacts my life. Now it's on display. Now you guys know. But I thought it was time that I share it. I thought it was time that I share my experience. And to be quite honest, because it is such a big part of my life, I felt like I should let you guys into it. So, with all that said, I think I'm going to end the video here. But if you like this story, please give it a thumbs up, as well as leave me a comment down below letting me know what questions you have about gastroparesis. Do you want to know about my diet? Do you want to know about my lifestyle? Different changes that I've had to make? Things that I now have to worry about? What do you want to know? Do you want to know anything? Are you at all curious? Or are you just like, okay, whatever, she has gastroparesis, that's fine, we're moving on? either one is fine. I'll probably be talking about it more now that I've announced it of sorts on different channels as it becomes necessary. And I'll be much more upfront instead of just be like, oh, my stomach hurts today. Be like, no, my gastroparesis is flaring today. Let's have a chat about it. So look forward to that. But with all of that said, if you do want to see any of that content in the future, as well as all the other content that I make, I have a lot of fun stuff coming out in the future. Be sure to hit that subscription button as well as the notification bell so you never miss a future upload. I am super excited for everything that is coming out across all of my platforms. So if you want to see all of the other stuff that's not here on YouTube, follow me on social media at The Rolling Explorer on every channel except for Twitter, where it's just at Rolling Explorer. But if you want quick and easy access to all of those, the links are down below, as well as the link to my blog, where once again you can read the Seeking a Diagnosis During a Pandemic blog post, as well as all of my other blog posts outlining a lot of different things about disability, about my life, about books, you name it, we got it. So go do all of that, but thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.